Transgender people. 8 people showed up to our meeting, about half of whom were transgender. And I asked people to introduce themselves and their pronouns and to share, why did you show up today for this group? I was not prepared for what I heard. The harassment, the terrifying violence that people have faced, the familial rejection some had endured. And when I got home, my husband asked me, "How was church this morning?" I just broke down and sobbed. I wanted to find ways for our church to be more welcoming. And after hearing what people shared, I realized we have to do so much more than that. At a later meeting, I asked if anyone in the group wanted to share a service with me, to share their story, their experience, their perspective. And a member shared that not only is it scary to be gender nonconforming, but it's also exhausting. That you're constantly speaking up to be gendered correctly. That you're advocating for yourself, you're educating others, you're doing work to just create the space for you to just be who you are. You're also walking the line to try to keep a job, get a job, navigate the public realm safely if you express your gender identity in public. And if you don't, you're going against the grain internally, carrying that weight with you. And so neither path is easy. One can get fatigued, and too darn fatigued to speak in public in front of a congregation about their experience. Besides, they said, people don't always take me seriously either. People may doubt what I have to say. It can be helpful to have a cisgender person, a person whose gender identity and expression is consistent with the sex they were assigned at their birth, like myself. To have a cisgender person speak about transgender issues and justice, using my gender privilege to lend legitimacy and to amplify trans people's experiences. And that's why I'm speaking today. I'm not an expert. I'm always learning, and I genuinely welcome feedback or input if I make mistakes or hurt anyone. And I hope you know that that invitation always exists. I'm always learning. So as you know, likely, this past week, our president's administration rescinded bathroom rights for transgender students that was put forth by the Obama administration. What you may not know is that in 2012, Argentina's Senate unanimously approved a gender identity law that makes sex reassignment surgery a legal right. The procedure is included in both public and private insurance. Denmark passed legislation 2 years later allowing legal gender recognition for transgender people over the age of 18 solely on the basis of their own determination, without any medical intervention. In Malta, the law similarly states, people shall not be required to provide proof of a surgical procedure for total or partial genital reassignment. They don't have to provide proof of hormonal therapies or other psychiatric, psychological, or medical treatment. These countries get it. Being trans is not a problem. It's not a problem to be solved by medication or psychotherapy. It's a reality that some people live with. It's a way a person is born. It's not the way they prefer to see themselves. It's how they actually know themselves to be. Where one's sense of self or gender identity is different from the sex they were assigned at birth. These countries get that there's nothing wrong with transgender people, and they affirm their worth and dignity as they are. Transgender people and gender nonconforming people deserve all the rights and dignity of personhood and citizenship afforded to cisgender people. And hopefully the statements put forth by the Supreme Court Justice's clerk recently to the anti-LGBT groups on the case with Gavin Grimm, that they are to stop misgendering him, maybe that can give us some hope that our nation too, our justices, might have a greater understanding than our president does. And we need to have greater understanding, way greater understanding than we do. We cannot do too much to educate ourselves and our citizenry right now because we need to save lives. One of the ways our Transgender Action Group helped increase my understanding was to partner with a group this fall to show the film Major. Were any of you there? Some of us. This film stays with me, and in these times of overwhelm and despair, I carry the main character, the documentary, Miss Major, this 75-year-old Black transgender activist. She's an elder in that community, and she's been fighting for civil rights for over 40 years. Her story speaks to the too common ignorance, fear, and subsequent violence of cisgender people when we encounter transgender people. And her story speaks also not just to the hardship she lived through, but the indomitable spirit of this woman to love and to live. And I didn't say survive. I said really live. And to understand the beauty of her soul, I have to share some of why it's so remarkable that she carries the love that she does, given what she's lived through. And as I've been reading about how to be a better anti-racist and transgender ally, I've learned that sometimes in telling and retelling these stories of violence and trauma, while it may be helpful to educate white cisgender people, it often re-traumatizes trans people and trans people of color. So I offer this trigger warning so that you know I encourage you to care for yourselves and to welcome you to do so today. And I also offer this prayer. May we be filled with tender courage to take the political stance that says we will not numb out as we listen to the pain and violence others have endured. We will not numb out and allow someone else's humanity to go underground so that we don't have to feel anything. We call up in ourselves the tender courage to listen, to feel, and for some of us to be seen. So the last job that Miss Major Griffin Gracie had, which she just retired from recently, it says a lot about her life. She was the executive director of the Transgender, Gender Variant, and Intersex Justice Project, whose mission is to challenge and end the human rights abuses committed against TGI people in California prisons, jails, detention centers, and beyond. She shared in the film how trans people can't get jobs in traditional places many times. Rejected by family and by society, trans people have to find some way to feed and house themselves. She said this is why many, including herself, have been sex workers at times, have had to steal, have had to do whatever it takes just to survive. Sometimes, she says, you get caught and you get put in jail. Sometimes you're not doing anything, and someone just fears you or hates you, and they attack you. And as you defend yourself and the police arrive, you're the one who gets arrested and put in jail. Like so many trans inmates, prison officials, when she was arrested, wouldn't see her as the woman she is. And so they housed her in the men's facility. Fearful for her safety, they put her in solitary confinement. She tells us that day after day, with no interaction with other people, except for the guard who comes and rapes you, you lose your mind. And you know that if you tell anyone what's happening to you while you're in solitary confinement for extended periods of time, that if you tell the guards what is happening, or the other guards, that they'll just view this as further justification that you wouldn't be safe in the regular prison cells and that you need to remain in solitary confinement. In an interview, we learned that when she was released on parole, she went home and did something she said she'd been dying to do for years. She says, I took a long, nice bath in Calgon. I got to shave really close. I put on a little makeup, I dyed my hair, I got my nails done, and the next day I went to report to my parole officer, and they violated me and sent me back to prison that night. The parole officer claimed that she had changed her appearance in order to abscond from parole. She was flabbergasted. There was no acknowledgement of the fact that I was a girl, she says, who just needed to arch my eyebrows and change my hairstyle. It wasn't as if the authorities didn't know she was transgender. She'd seen the giant red stamp, deviant, that marked all the top of her paperwork. The interview continues, telling us that the second time she was released on parole, she stayed out for a few months before an officer claimed to have seen her going into a so-called deviant bar and sent her back to prison. After that, she served out the rest of her sentence. She said that when she was finally freed, she questioned her gender identity. She tried to convince herself that being transgender was wrong. It took her a year to get back to herself and go back outside dressed the way she wanted others to see her as herself. After you come out of those places, she said, you're not the same as when you went in. It chips away at you. You go through this battle with yourself, and you either win or lose. And winning is getting what you need to do, and losing is doing what they want you to do. I finally cut that string and got a chance to go back to being who I was. And who is she? She is the woman who revealed her transition to her mother by coming home from a breast implant surgery and immediately flashed her, to which her mother responded by fainting. She is the parent who cared for her son, Christopher, and described it like this: I'm always his dad. Whether I'm in a push-up bra, blonde hair, red hair, 3-inch heels, flats, whatever, I'm always his dad. It's been marvelous knowing that he is breathing on this earth somewhere, this little piece of me. And I don't know how he got to be older than I am now. She adopted and raised 3 other sons as well. She said, we met them in the park. They used to come around for meals. Then when we moved, they moved with us. They've never known me without breasts or without me being femme. 2 of them call me mom. 2 of them call me dad. That's on them. Whatever. Just call me. Her former wife describes her with male pronouns and as deeply genderqueer. She is, after all, the parent who tried to go to a daddy-run daycare in a suit without trying to hide her extremely large breasts at all. She was rejected. She's the beautifully painted woman who performed and was paid to sing in front of others in her glorious woman style. She's the woman who also later in her life is fine with having beard stubbles and her long flowing wig. She is the bald person who shows up on screen without her false teeth in, who laughs with abandon. She is who she is, and she doesn't feel the need to make other people comfortable with her gender expression. She knows who she is. She need only express it in the ways that she accepts. She is a fierce presence, grounded in her fierce heart to love and to live well. At the end of the movie, the source of her fierceness is revealed. She says, we have to survive. She and her girls, she says, we have to survive. That's what she's all about. When women get out of prison who have been incarcerated, trans women, especially trans women of color, she and her project, they call them. She invites them to come stay at her house. She says, if you don't have a family, you have one now. Many of the people in her community call her mama. She is their mother. She is their matriarch. And she wants them to survive. The victims of fatal hate violence are overwhelmingly transgender women, in particular transgender women of color. These women live at the intersection of racism, transphobia, and transmisogyny. At the end of the film, they show all of the women depicted whose stories they had told throughout the film who had died since the film had been made. Some from violence, but so many more from the violence of society that makes it hard to get a job, to keep a job, to have health insurance, to access regular health care. So many of the people died in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s from regular things that many of us have probably struggled with and survived, because the obstacles they face in receiving health care are too many to suffer through, to be misgendered, to be erased, to be fondled, to be mistreated, to have to face that over and over again, to go in for routine care that could have easily been treated and diagnosed during routine visits. Ignorance and hate kills too many young women. Following these women, they showed a montage of all of the women who were also in the film who are still alive. And they each say their name in this homage to Miss Major, but they don't just say, I'm here. They drop a big bomb, they swear. but they say, I'm still fucking here. And they deserve to say that. To carve out the space to just walk through the world against, in so many ways, just the erasure of humanity. I appreciate, I heard Laverne Cox speaking on the news about what the recent legislation, the pullback of transgender bathroom rights means. And she said, we know that it's not really about bathrooms. California passed this legislation years ago, and they don't have problems. It is about erasing the public existence of trans people. It is about saying we don't have to acknowledge you even exist. Until the Supreme Court said, you have to name them correctly, which will cause some awkwardness, I'm sure, for lawyers litigating cases saying he can't use the boys' bathroom. Miss Major is fierce because she has to be to survive, and because also she has chosen to respond to her life in a way that shines. Not everyone in her heels chooses to make the choices she has made. She should be the face of nevertheless, she persisted. She is the epitome of living and loving boldly. As another trans journalist, Janet Mock, says, she is the face of liberation. We need liberation right now. Liberation from hatred, liberation from fear. Let's not put off our liberation. They say ministers preach about what they need to hear. I need this ritual. I need you to come up and light more candles, please. And if you need at the end of our service to take a candle home with you, to remember that we have faith here, that this is a place we can return to, that we are not going to give up, we are not going to crumble, we are not going to shut our doors, we are not going to stop speaking, we are not going to stop loving. You can take a candle home with you. Let's not put off our liberation. I encourage you to go Google Miss Major and watch some of her clips. You got to see her talk and how she embodies her spirit. Let's carry her spirit. She's lived through more than I ever will have to. So let's have the courage to not put it off. Let's not wait for someone else to hand it to us. Even as we seek social liberation, let's be liberating and liberated by love right now. Amen.